You are listening to I Am Interchange.
I am interchange.
I am interchange.
I am Interchange.
Fostering curiosity, education, and empathy by exploring the controversial and the provocative.
I am interchange.
Welcome back, everybody. Tate Chamberlain here to introduce Greg Smith to this episode of I Am Interchange. Examining the balance of compassion versus practicality. Greg grew up in Twin Bridges, Montana, reading everything he could get his hands on. He realized early on in life that he was a homosexual, but chose to shut that part of himself down in order to be socially accepted. Later in life, he chose to enter the seminary for the Roman Catholic Church and served as a priest at the cathedral in Helena, Montana. He ultimately took a sabbatical from the church in order to more fully embrace his identity while becoming an activist in Seattle's LGBTQ community. He's since started a counseling practice and is an advocate working to make sure LGBTQ kids growing up in Montana feel safe in their home and in schools. Greg believes it's God's directive and our moral imperative to take care of the immigrants and refugees seeking sanctuary at our borders. He describes his compassion as having no bounds and believes that we lose in the long run if we are so entrenched in our opinion that we fail to see humanity of our opponents.
I think I can look at every human being and find something to love about them. The commandment is love God with all your mind and heart and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Not love your neighbor as, a dog or as something else. Love them like you would love yourself.
Living with AIDS since 2007, he also embraces universal health care for its practical implications in his life, as well as another extension of our responsibility to take care of each other.
But my argument for it is that if you want America to be awesome, America should be healthy, and Americans should be healthy. And having access to that health care is not going to do anything but make us better.
Let's get Greg's thoughts on how compassion should be our defining rule and why we stand to lose so much in terms of the planetary health and personal happiness when we ignore our connections to each other. This episode is supported by Blunderbuss, an artist, activist, and entrepreneur's makerspace in Bozeman, Montana, and is the creative home for I Am Interchange. Hey, Greg.
Hey.
How's it going?
It's pretty good. Got my tea, got my Billy D.
Got your tea, your Billy D, and DT.
And an African violet hanging out in the window.
Yeah, it is. We're talking about knickknacks in the Blunderbuss studio, makeshift studio, until our real one is done. There's also a Donald Trump, Make America Great Again bobblehead. He who shall not be named.
He who does not deserve any attention.
Can you tell me a little bit about the early years of your life? Little Greg Smith.
Little Greg Smith grew up in Twin Bridges. My mom was from Butte. My dad is a rancher. Small town, 20 kids in my class. And I was not a very athletic kid. I have asthma pretty badly, and so I couldn't really play sports and do stuff. So I just mostly read everything. Like I read every book in the Twin Bridges Public Library that interested me. They would call me when they were ordering the books from the library to see if there was anything I wanted. And it was like, there was a librarian named May Lunger, and she was like this 90-year-old woman. But I mean, that's how I remember her. But back in the day, I think she was probably in her 70s. But, I was a little kid, so I just thought she was ancient. But she actually was one of my best friends growing up, because she would let me read anything in the library. She would pick things off the shelf for me if I couldn't reach them.
Oh, awesome. Would she just suggest things for you also?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you ever go back when you were older? And
she died when I was in college, so I didn't really get to talk to her after that. But I still remember her. It was when I figured out I was gay, because we were all in the treehouse, and somebody brought their dad's Playboys, and people were looking at all these naked women and getting really excited, and I couldn't figure out why. And I was like, oh, she has nice hair, I guess. I don't know what's going on. And then I'm like, oh, crap.
God, look at those shoes.
Something's really wrong with me, because I just didn't act like the other boys I was around. So I kind of figured out what it was. And May Lunger.
How old were you?
I think I was 7, 8 years old.
Wow.
And May Lunger caught me trying to take this big green book off the shelf, because she went to the bathroom one day, and she'd always ask me to, if I was in the library, just watch the desk, not that much ever happened, but there was this big book with a green cover, and it said sexuality and homosexuality, and it was probably like 500 pages, and it was on the very top shelf of this, rickety metal library stack.
So you were a little kid on a chair that had another thing stacked on it on another
Was
thing.
on a chair on a box, getting over the phone book and then a box, and trying to get that book.
Could you make it more obvious that you were looking for that book?
Well, she came back too early.
Yeah, totally.
So she came back and she caught me and she's like, I thought she was going to be mad at me or something. And she's like, oh, honey, why don't you take that book and go in the back and read it so you're not disturbed. And there's this little
oh my gosh, how
seat
sweet.
in the back. And yeah, she was all about freedom of information. So I learned, back in the day that I was different, and I had to kind of shut myself down, shut that part off, as it says in the Book of Mormon. Shut it off, switch it off.
I've never experienced you switching it off.
No, that happened. I switched it back on before I met you.
So what happened to make you turn it back on? What made you turn it? What made you keep it off, and what made you turn it on?
Well, mostly I think it was the AIDS crisis that happened in the 80s. It was terrifying, and we didn't know what was going on, and all these gay men were dying. And I really liked church. Like, it was kind of my favorite thing to do during the week. And I just sort of made the connection, wow, I could be a priest, and then I won't die. And people will respect me, because if they know I'm gay, then they're going to probably disrespect me. And it was kind of a win-win there for a while. I got really good grades in college, and I got sent to the seminary in Rome, which doesn't happen to everybody. First of all, it's very expensive, and I was there for 5 years to get 2 degrees in theology, and it was cool. It was very cool.
So this was late high school, early college?
It was after college, yeah, when I went to Rome.
So you, rather than choosing a normal life, you went into the priesthood and kind of the celibate life.
Yeah, I liked it too.
To shield yourself from it?
In a way. I mean, a lot of the stuff was just unconscious, subconscious stuff. Like, I didn't really make sense of it until later. But, no, it seemed like the perfect opportunity.
But you enjoyed it, yeah. You found your community.
I had a lot of fulfillment, and it was a lot of great things happening. I started to become aware probably in the 7th year of being a priest in Helena. I was at the cathedral in Helena. I just kind of was getting grouchy and crabby, and one of my best friends, Annette, said to me, Greg, you're going to turn into one of those crabby old priests, aren't you, that hates everybody? And I was like, holy crap, no. She's like, what the hell's the matter with you? And I was like, I'm pretty happy, but I'm not really happy. There's a part of me that's missing, and I told her, I came out to her and said, I'm gay, and I thought I could handle this, but I don't think I can handle this anymore. Keeping the secret is just so toxic in me. So I had a great therapist, and she helped me, give me a place to be and a safe place to talk about everything, and basically saved my life. I mean, I was really despondent. I didn't really know what to do. So she helped me take a leave of absence from the church, and I moved to Seattle. The church paid for 2 years of therapy for me, which I'm grateful for. And my therapist, Peter, still a good friend to this day, suggested that I become a therapist. He's like, he just noticed that I was really good at hanging out with people and getting, connecting. So
not judging.
Right. Just connecting and just being there and seeing who they are. And so I started, he was a Gestalt therapist, which is, it's kind of some people call it a fringe psychology, but I don't. It's actually really effective.
What's it called?
Gestalt.
Gestalt?
Mm-hmm. And it's about seeing the whole picture. And we don't really pathologize anybody, so I don't really diagnose people with illness or treat them that way. People can look it up. It's pretty awesome. It's all about contact between the therapist and the patient emotionally. And having that.
Like being present and working.
That's how people change. Yeah. Sure. So I quit the church after 2 years of being on leave and started grad school at Seattle U in mental health counseling. And it was just great. I finally felt free. I felt like it was my thing, all mine. And I could do this, and I didn't have to hide. I didn't have to fight anybody about it. I could just be me.
It reminds me of someone, like, you were so constrained, and then you got this sensory overload by moving to Seattle. What was that like to your sexuality and exploration with that drastic of a change?
It was terrifying. and it was exciting. And I met some of the best friends of my life there. I moved in with my best friend in college in an apartment off Green Lake, and she made it her business to get me to every gay event and all the parades and special nights out and all this sort of stuff. And she was just really we just really had the greatest time together. We lived together for like 3 years, and she remains one of my best friends today. But I was like, I don't think I want to go to the parade. And she's like, you're going to the parade. We're going to the parade. Get in the car. You're going to the parade. And then I went to the parade and I was like, wow, this is pretty cool.
So that was it was the first parade that had happened in Seattle while you were there.
Yeah, it was the first one. I moved there it was Memorial Day weekend, which was the end of May, and then Pride was like 3 weeks later.
And it blew your mind, all those beautiful dudes with...
Oh my God, these are my people.
Yeah.
Like, these are my people. They get to do things like hold hands walking down the street and don't have to worry about someone pulling the gun out of the gun rack and threatening them with violence or threatening to beat them up or just getting a nasty look.
Yeah, it's such a simple thing, being afraid to hold hands in public.
Mm-hmm. Can't do it. Not that often. Not around here.
Yeah, not around Bozeman, but around Seattle and Pride events.
Mm-hmm.
How did your activism get aligned with it? Was it spiteful to the church, or how was that trajectory?
It happened gradually. I mean, I don't think anybody just gets struck by lightning and is like, I have a cause, But I'm smart, and I knew how to talk to people, and I'm a writer, and I saw a lot of injustice being done to my community, and other people didn't have to live that way. Other people didn't have to live under fear as much as we did back in the day. And LGBTQ people of color even more so. I mean, and transgender people even more so than that. We all deserve to be treated like people. And I also realized, when I left Catholicism, I realized that if I had remained a priest, and they wanted me back, actually.
Even after coming out?
Yeah. They wanted me back, and I was thinking about it actively later on. But this was like almost 10 years later, but that's another story. But I just couldn't be the agent of my own oppression. If I was going to go back into Roman Catholicism, I would have to toe the company line, which I could not agree with, and it was not based on any experience I've ever had.
But you found your way back to the church in your own way.
It was a long journey, but it was fun.
What's your church experience like right now?
I'm the assisting priest at St. James, Bozeman, so I basically help out wherever I can, but my counseling practice is full-time, so I do that. But yeah, I was helping out at Living Waters Methodist Church in Belgrade because a friend of a friend was the pastor there, and he found out I was kind of interested in helping out and using that, coming back to that part of my life and recognizing that, not all Christians hate LGBT people. They just don't. But I was so conditioned as a kid and by the church to believe that they were subhuman, these people. And I've heard that word so many times, those words, these people. And it's abhorrent to me. So I got an invite from someone at the ACLU that said Gene Robinson, who's the first gay bishop, is coming to Billings for a Fair is Fair campaign. We are all atheists over here at the ACLU, so we're looking for somebody who has a religious background to kind of haul him around for 3 days. And I was like, I'm in. I will take 3 days off work. I know. I'm like, this is a match made in heaven. So
he also officiated your wedding.
Yeah, he did.
Later on, so made a friendship.
Yeah, we're still really good friends. I just talked to him on yesterday. We mostly text, but he likes jokes. We kind of have the same amount of sense of humor. So, but I just got to hang out with him and realize that it's the most normal thing in the world to be who I am. And why should anybody have to act like it's not? And that solidified everything for me. After moving back to Montana, after getting HIV and being really sick and dealing with colon cancer and all that sort of thing, I moved back to Montana and I lived in Butte with Father Sarsfield O'Sullivan. He had this great big house, and took care of him and decided that I really wanted to make sure that another kid who may be in my shoes growing up in a small town here didn't have to leave here to feel safe. That's just kind of been the whole reason for my voice, reason for speaking up.
Love that. Giving that light that you didn't have, that kind of mentorship.
I've got an underground network of families who will take care of kids who've been kicked out by their parents for being LGBTQ. And last year we helped 12 kids. Most of them, by the way, kicked out of Christian, quote-unquote, homes. It just boggles my mind. I don't have children, but it boggles my mind how a parent could just turn their back on a child like that.
I mean, let's lead that into what we're here for. The event we have coming up is called Compassion versus Practicality. In the church's mind, in an evangelical church's mind, what is the practical side for being against the LGBT community?
It's mostly based on Scripture. There are 7 texts that reference sexual behavior in Scripture, and they both from the Hebrew Scriptures and the Christian Scriptures, what people know as the Old and New Testaments. But they're taking a face value, a literal translation, a literal interpretation of the Bible, which is not what we do. As like most Christian denominations who love biblical scholarship know that the Bible was not written in English. And the evangelicals love the King James Version of the Bible. And by the way, King James was gay. Hello. And they don't realize that it's a translation of a translation. And the word homosexuality, if it's in your Bible, is wrong. That word was not coined until the late 1800s. So if you see that word in your Bible, it's wrong. What it is all about, what they're saying, is that, okay, let's just go back. The whole Bible is patriarchal, basically. It's based on a patriarchal system where men are superior to women. And women really have no rights, especially in early Israel. No rights at all. In fact, there's one prayer that Jewish men might say in the morning, "Thank you, God, that I was born neither a dog nor a woman." And so you have to think about the mechanics of gay sex in that way. Most early cultures at that time used anal intercourse as a way of humiliating people defeated in battle. And the thing was, we'll treat you like a woman, which is basically our property, by raping you. And so that was objectionable. And you have to remember, there was no real realization of homosexuality back in the day.
Yeah, so it's like a proving your dominance type thing.
Absolutely, power struggle. Well, and it goes even into Paul later on. But the famous story of Sodom and Gomorrah had nothing to do with homosexuality. Nothing. The people in that town wanted to humiliate the guests at Lot's house by raping them. It didn't have anything to do with sinful sort of sexual desire. It had everything to do with power. So every time you see sexual references of that nature, it's either a direct reference to male power and a shaming for anyone who would allow themselves to be penetrated like a woman. Thankfully, we're not arguing for that today. I mean, nobody wants to argue for abuse or rape. But all of the scriptures, especially around that, are a lot more clear. Evangelicals aren't really interested, I don't think, in going into the culture and context the way we are. In the Anglican tradition, it's all about who was the author, who was the author's audience, what was the author's intention. Because the Bible is just a bunch of books, put together, and it wasn't really a book like we know it as the book until the 14th century.
So was King James trying to prove his dominance, or was he actually homosexual?
Yeah, he had a gay lover, yeah.
Okay. I was checking that. I didn't know that, but it turns out he was.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely. I think I put a Facebook post up last week about it because I was just thinking about it the other day, and people got all kinds of cranky. Like, dude, it's historically documented.
Just read it.
Whatever.
Just read it. The 2 topics, compassion versus practicality, we're taking 2 current events. One is the border wall and immigration, and the other is healthcare for all, free healthcare for all. Mm-hmm. So you are not for the border wall?
No, I don't think it's necessary. I've read a lot, and I've talked to a lot of people who've gone and been part of it. I don't think it's necessary. I think what we're doing down there is cruel, and ripping families apart or holding people in detention centers, I just can't find that to be a compassionate response to this crisis.
Well, are there immigration issues in the United States?
I suppose. I mean, I guess.
What kind?
I've never really known a lot of immigrants personally. I've known a few. I work with several in my church. For the most part, I haven't really seen a problem with it. People are really interested in assimilating and be part of this culture and work hard. It's some of the entitled people that I think is part of a crisis in this country.
People who are born here might be entitled.
Yeah. White male privilege, just, cranky about people taking away their jobs, which they wouldn't do.
Well, the U.S. is more than just white male privilege. People who are critical of how immigration is working isn't just a white.
Yeah, but I really listen to some of these stories and the struggles and the sacrifices that these families or these individuals have to go through in order to come here. Nobody ever in this country would ever have to imagine that if they were born here.
Okay, so keep the borders open for immigration. How many people should we allow in per year? Is there a number?
I'm not a statistician, I don't know. But I do know that the border crossings are lower, have been lower, and it's always been a problem since the United States was formed. I mean, the reason for Ellis Island was to have an orderly place for people to enter and be counted and to come into the country. That system doesn't seem to be as healthy today, or not that it was all healthy, but it's really disjointed in my mind, and I'm not sure how we fix it. I just know that the response is not what I'm not comfortable with that.
Should people have to enter the United States legally to get its services?
I think the asylum issue is really big. I read almost every day about people being deported and going back to a country that possibly and has will kill them or kills them. And we're not taking that seriously. I mean, what price for human life? We're forgetting that these are human beings. They need compassion. They deserve compassion. They probably deserve our respect more than our compassion.
I know you're not a statistician. I want to know what you would do if you were in charge in the U.S. and there was a caravan of 5,000 migrants coming your way.
Mm-hmm.
Do you put them somewhere to sort them out, or do you turn them away?
I think we have to look at why they're coming. I mean, my God.
What are your actions when they are coming to you? How do you
meet them and you assess, you see what they need, you see what we can do for them and what they're fleeing, and you just don't shove them away.
A camp?
Absolutely.
Well, I feel like we do that.
We do, I guess, to a certain extent. The people who've been to the border and who've talked about what they've seen, it resembles more of a prison than it ever does a camp. I mean, people aren't really allowed to come and go as they please. People aren't free. And sometimes, families are mixed up. Children have been lost. Families are broken, separated. Parents sent back home. Children remain.
Yeah, but
it's crazy.
So you're in charge. How do you organize that, though?
Well, ultimately, I would hope that I would help in a way that gave dignity to everybody who's there. And, if we can afford to spend so many billions of dollars on weapons we never use, I just don't see this as a financial issue, that it's not something we can't afford to do, because we can. We just don't want to. And I think that kind of xenophobia and that fear that has been the flames have been fanned by people who are just really insecure about their own place in the world. There's enough for everybody. Why isn't there enough for everybody? You want to talk about the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah? This is almost the same thing. Refusing hospitality. In Jesus' day, it was a sin to not offer a stranger welcome in the desert. I mean, you to this day, if you try to climb Mount Sinai and you meet Bedouin on the way, you have to stop and have tea and something to eat with them, because that is a very harsh world. And the Jewish people's enjoinder to welcome the stranger comes right out of that desert livelihood. Like, you just never let another human being go anywhere without, feeding and giving them something to drink and rest. And that kind of hospitality is the kind of thing that I'm talking about. It's radical, but I don't see what's wrong with it.
You think there's a limit to our hospitality?
Well, I know there is. I mean, we're reaching it right now. So, I don't think there has to be.
Looking 10, 20, 50 years into the future, it's the beginning. It already is the largest human migration in history, but it's going to be probably worse than we're even imagining right now with rising sea levels. And when that happens, I mean, is there a number that's not sustainable where we would be sacrificing our health. They say that, if I'm not healthy myself, then I can't help others as well. Is there a breaking point for that with too many people in the country?
I don't know about that. What I do know is that we can't really afford to ignore these people. There's an old saying, it's like, there's this body in the river and I'm going to go fish out the body. And then there's another body in the river. Well, at some point you have to quit fishing out the bodies and go find who the hell is throwing these people in the river. And that's kind of the whole point, is what the world is like today. And a lot of these people in Latin America fleeing hostile regimes, leaving with nothing, and just for the promise of being free. I mean, isn't that what America's all about? I think we can make this work. We've always been a nation of industry and vision, but we can't let fear and the possibility that you're going to get mine get in our way of that. I think Jesus was really pretty clear. You are to take care of the people who are poor, in need, suffering, and take care of them. Take care of them. In fact, that's, one of the first things that the apostles did after the resurrection was they pooled all their money and they took care of each other. Jesus was a socialist, probably. So, that's not going to fly well.
I thought he was a carpenter.
He was. But I mean, he's like, we should all take care of each other. This is the vision of God, I think. And we kind of have a nightmare going on right now. But God's dream is that we all live together in respect and love and care. So I don't think it's going to be a problem. If it's going to be a problem, I think that the world should rise to the challenge and see what we can do about it, not just shut the door.
Well, let's talk about asylum. A lot of the issue I've learned is people flying into the country and just never leaving. Mm-hmm. Is there an abuse to people seeking asylum?
I suppose, just like everything else, but I don't know if people overstaying their visas, if we had a really good system in charge of managing that, it probably wouldn't happen as much.
Well, I mean, we do. I mean, checking in and out of a country with your passport, they stamp it.
But the follow-up on people who are overstaying doesn't really happen.
Sure it does. I mean, what do you think ICE is?
Statistically, I think they get 5% of them or something. I read some really low number.
Should there be follow-up if people come in knowingly?
Well, there need to be rules. Yeah, there need to be rules for an honest civilization, for sure. I don't know what those rules should be.
So you're an ICE supporter?
I support the principles. I don't support the brutality.
Okay.
And the fear-mongering and kind of the Gestapo tactics that seem to be used. I'm not a fan of that at all.
Another topic I want to touch base on, a lot of times when we're accepting refugees, we take the best and brightest. How does that impact where they come from when we say that we should help them where they're at by taking all of their problem solvers? How does that help them where they're at?
I'm not sure I understand.
When we accept refugees and people who can pull strings to get into the United States.
Oh, I see.
Are usually the best and brightest from where they come from.
Sure.
They're often the problem solvers. So by allowing that and only nitpicking towards that might be a blanket statement, nitpicking only those people, but we're taking away their human capital to problem solve back home.
So is that a moral question? Like, is that moral or not? If they're fleeing something, I think we have to know what they're fleeing. We took all sorts of scientists from Germany during World War II. Einstein was one of them. We took a lot of people in, and those folks helped us win the war, for sure. But we also took in a bunch of immigrants who were poorer than, we can imagine. And some of those kids, the kids of those immigrants, grew up to be, people like problem solvers,
right.
Obama, things like, they grew into the society. And I think we need to take a bet on those people. We never know what people are going to have in store for us.
Where does compassion break for you? Is there a limit where your compassion runs out?
No, not really. I can get angry and that can eclipse it, but I can look at I think I can look at every human being and find something to love about them. That's kind of my job, I think.
What about the Montana Family Foundation?
They're all comprised of people who have people that love them, and they love other people. I think they're very misguided because let's just say, all the homosexuality references and the anti-LGBT bills that they've come up with are based on LGBT people not being human. And I think that's wrong. I think that's really wrong. And it's based in a theology that is kind of slim. The commandment is love God with all your mind and heart and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Not love your neighbor as, a dog or as something else. Love them like you would love yourself.
So being described like that by them, you still find it in yourself to have compassion?
Yeah, I think they're really confused, poor guys.
How about someone like a white supremacist?
Also very confused.
Is it someone you would censor or not want to hear the viewpoint of? Is there a compassion breaking point?
No, I don't think anybody should be censored. But I think we have to, our job is not to confront them in the movement. There are a lot of people who are in your face about it. And there are a lot of people who are very quick to call other human beings bigots. There are a lot of people very quick to be offended. But we're not having as much critical dialogue as we could be having. We're not having an opportunity where people can see each other as human beings, not just political positions or whatever, opinions.
Up at the Capitol or behind Facebook?
Yeah. I went up to the Capitol a couple months ago to testify for a bill adding LGBT people to the Montana Human Rights Act. And I had my 13-year-old goddaughter with me. And the proponents of the bill, which was a good bill, is a good bill. I'm not sure if it's dead yet, but we got to speak first. And I was one of the first people in line. And I asked to be excused before the opponent testimony because I didn't want her, at 13 years old, to hear all of the misguided things that came out of her mouth. Mm. That, to me, is a parenting thing, she's my goddaughter. And I really don't mind having that in context, but in a legislative hearing, there's no give and take. You stand up, you give your opinion, and then you have to sit the heck down and wait for everybody else to give theirs. And opinions are just like buttholes. We've all got one, and they mostly smell.
Yeah.
So I hope you edit that out, but
I probably won't.
But if we're so entrenched in our opinion that we fail to see the humanity of the person across from us, we lose. We lose.
So you experienced some sort of censorship when you had kind of a father-daughter relationship?
Yeah, no, I didn't. It's just like any other parent. You don't send them to R-rated movies when they're 5. I have to prepare people for a discussion, and she's young and gay, and impressionable, and I want her to have the most nurturing, supportive childhood that she can have.
Yeah, that's
She's
fair.
in a family that loves and cares about her. They've sacrificed for her. So it's not really censoring. If she's not capable of really understanding something or just risks being offended and hurt by nasty people, damn right I'm not going to let them hang out. Yeah.
So does that seep over? As an adult, I want to hear everyone's opinion no matter how uncomfortable it makes me. That doesn't, allowing myself to hear an opinion like that doesn't mean I'm going to follow them.
No.
I'd like to have the trust of other community members that I can listen and reflect and make my own smart decision around it. Is censorship happening right now? Is that this mix of the media and fake news? And
I think people love to live in their own little bubble, and they're not really interested in looking at other things. I was just listening to the news on the way out here, and they're all scrambling. This Jussie Smollett being no charges being filed, and the Mueller people. This is just crazy, and everybody has an opinion. You just turn on Fox News, you turn on CBS, you turn on MSNBC, CNN. They bring people on all day long.
It's like react
the freaking opinion of people, and it doesn't really get us anywhere. It's just like spleen venting. We just kind of go, oh, this sucks, and I'm going to tell you why it sucks, and then you're going to agree that it sucks, and then we all agree that it sucks, and the people who don't agree that it sucks, we can gang up on them. It's like this power thing.
It's like a grieving process, though.
Sure, but but in the end, if you're not willing to sit down and look at another human being and be open and you want them to be open to you, I mean, you have no credibility. If you expect the world to be open to you and you're not open to the world, your credibility is totally stunk.
I agree with that.
But I think it needs to be done in a respectful way. And I have been part of things that have devolved pretty rapidly into name calling and position pointing and entrenchment. And when we're dealing with things that cause such high emotion, I think the first question is, why is this so emotional? What makes this so emotional for you? And people are mostly motivated by fear. Fear is just what happens when you think you're going to get something you don't want in the future, right? It's my favorite definition of fear. It's like, it's always about the future. If you stay completely in the present moment, which is one of the tenets of Buddhism, you can never be afraid. If I'm holding a gun to your head, you're not afraid of me holding the gun to your head. You're afraid of when I pull the trigger in the future.
Right.
So for me, it's about being present as much as I can with people. And I mean, I'll admit, the last few years have been hard. I mean, I'm watching things that I fought for very hard kind of falling apart in terms of LGBT rights across this country. Things are shifting. Human rights are changing. And that is very disappointing to me. It makes me very angry, but I can't give up.
Is it making your fire even stronger?
Well, I mean, I've been angry for 2.5 years, just like really pissed off. Because, well, let me backtrack. There are two most painful thoughts in the world. The first most painful thought in the world is, this shouldn't be happening to me, whatever it is, right? Can you imagine how that's painful?
Sure.
Fundamental denial of reality. Second most painful thought in the world, in my opinion, is, you should see this the way I do.
So
Never gonna happen.
The
Not in a
craving
million
for
years.
empathy?
No, the should is there, though, right? So you should see this the way I do, because the way I see it is right.
And not getting your point, not feeling listened to?
Right. Yeah.
Sure.
But my point is that I will never see anything the way anybody else does. It's not possible. And even if I can't live in somebody else's body and have their physical sensations in their brain and all the things going on and look at something and see it the way they do.
I mean, you can overlap a little bit.
Yeah, it's impossible, though. You can never see anything.
To completely.
Yep, never.
Yeah.
And even the people we're most close to, I mean, I still have to explain things the way I see them to my husband. He doesn't see them the way I do. And we're, pretty tight. So, I mean, that's kind of the point. I mean, for me, love is a commitment to try to understand each other, right? It's not a commitment to win. Although I think love always wins. But that's another conversation.
Love does always win. Mm-hmm. Socialized healthcare.
Yeah.
Are you for it? Are you for free healthcare?
I have AIDS, so yeah.
Yeah, okay.
We just got a new...
Is it HIV or AIDS?
I was diagnosed with AIDS. And once you're diagnosed with AIDS, you're always an AIDS patient. That's when your T cells fall below 200 and you have an opportunistic infection. And I was hospitalized. In fact, the doctor came in and my T cells, I had like 91 T cells left, and you're supposed to have, up to 3,000. So it was an AIDS-defining diagnosis. And she came in, my doctor, and she's like, Greg, you're really sick. We're going to admit you to the hospital. And you need to inform your family. And if they could fly rather than drive, that would be better. And I was like, holy crap. I didn't feel like I was dying. I felt pretty sick, but I didn't feel like I was dying. It never even occurred to me.
But this is during the time where a lot of people were.
Mm-hmm. But it was also the time when medication, so this is 2007, January 11th, 2007, when I got that diagnosis. Medication is so expensive. But we have it. I got on it, and 30 days later, I was feeling great. My T cells were kind of moving in the right direction, and my T cells are back up to like almost 1,300 today, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, wow.
So I'm basically a really healthy person walking around.
So you're for free healthcare because it would be really expensive to keep you alive any other way?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, why not? Let's take care of each other. If the whole society is healthy and happy, I mean, we've done all sorts of studies about this. It's the countries with socialized medicine or free universal health care that have the highest happiness index year after year after year after freaking year. And it does not and will not cost anything like the budget for our military.
That's true. Yeah, I have the Affordable Care Act, and I have pre-existing conditions. Who doesn't have pre-existing conditions?
Life is kind of a pre-existing condition. But my argument for it is that if you want America to be awesome, America should be healthy. And Americans should be healthy. And having access to that health care is not going to do anything but make us better.
So we say we do this. What is deemed medically necessary?
Well, this brings up another problem, because sometimes insurance companies are the people saying what's medically necessary, and they go against the advice of my doctor.
Well, in your opinion, what's medically necessary? Say healthcare were free for all.
I mean, any kind of health condition that needs to be treated is medically necessary. Like you skin your knee on something, you get a Band-Aid. It's medically necessary. If your appendix bursts, you get an appendectomy. It's medically necessary. If your teeth rot in your head, you have them pulled out and replaced with dentures because it's medically necessary. I don't know if that question is really.
Well,
how about like cosmetic surgery or something like that? No, absolutely not. You have to pay for that. This is like just getting to the basic building blocks of human rights and life. I don't need to look younger in order to be healthy. I know. Some of these people look like they've been in the Gravitron too long. You
have more trans friends than I do, but I know a few. How does this affect your opinion about that?
About surgery for trans people?
Yeah.
It's medically necessary. Working with trans people over the years, people who can change their bodies to match who their brain is telling them they are less depressed, less anxious. It creates medical pain relief.
Yeah, well,
mental pain relief is. I mean, it's just like if you. Let me think of a really great example. If you were born without an arm and you wanted an arm, and science says, "Okay, Tate, I can give you an arm, but you have to go through healthcare to get it," would you?
Sure.
Yeah, probably. A lot of times in this country, we don't even have that option. People don't even have the option. They can't take care of themselves because they'd rather eat or they'd buy medicine for their family. I hear this so often.
What do you tell people who criticize the trans community over this in particular part of the law?
They're ignorant.
God bless them. It seems like it's cosmetic surgery from the outside.
Yeah, not at all. If you suddenly had the body of a woman and you had to get out of the shower every morning, and God knows there's a big mirror across from every shower in the world, and you had to look at your body and realize it didn't fit you every single day, and you had to live in it every single day, how depressed do you think you would be?
Yeah, I imagine pretty.
Suicidally depressed. Absolutely. Trans people attempt suicide, 9 times more than the general population. 9 times. It's not okay. They're in pain, and I believe we have a responsibility to relieve pain and suffering.
I like you.
I love you. I do.
Can you give me a couple...
I should have brought my dog, Phyllis.
You should have brought Phyllis. Can you give me a couple of examples of practicality in your life?
I have money put away in case of emergencies. I always have a nest egg kind of hanging out somewhere. I also give away a lot of money.
Is that practical?
Yeah, absolutely.
Might be both compassionate and practical.
Yeah. I'm overseeing a scholarship, the Sam Edelman Scholarship at the Pride Foundation, and we're just about ready to make a grant, I think, this year or next, for a trans student to go to college. Sam Edelman was one of my patients who killed himself because he was transgender, and the only patient I've ever had that has committed suicide that I know of. And it affected me really deeply. And in fact, the doctor's office where we had approached to get Sam started on female hormone replacement therapy turned him down because he wasn't 18 yet. And that pretty much was what killed him. And today, they have a policy of listening to everybody now.
No matter what your age is.
No matter what your age is. And I work with kids as young as 9. They know. I mean, they just know. And people are always like, well, wait till they're old enough to make their own decision. I'm like, dude, they're making the decision to kill themselves at that age. Well, I think we should choose life, don't you?
Seriously, yeah.
Yeah, we should choose life. I got a little squeaky on that. Am I getting shrill, Tate?
No, I think I'm poking you just hard enough.
I think we're called to be less powerful and power hungry and more loving. And I think that was the whole point of Jesus' ministry. He chose the power of love over the love of power. And being a Christian means that we are to do the same. And if we can't maximize happiness and eliminate suffering at the same time, I mean, that's the whole vision, that's the whole dream of God, right? Peace on earth. The lion laying down with the lamb, people getting the heck along. I'm in that for the long haul. That's kind of my point is, as a priest, I think I have to fight for that. I have to address that. And there's sometimes a prophetic voice that has to say, look, we're on our way downhill, down the skids. If we keep going, it's just going to get worse, and nobody will be okay. And I have to warn people about what I see, I think.
Greg Smith, thanks for being here.
Yeah.
I can't wait for our compassion versus practicality event with you.
Thanks. I hope I can keep my temper. I think I'll take a Xanax before.
No, don't do that.
No, I'm kidding. Maybe just a stiff drink.
Just don't burn the building down.
No, I won't. Thanks for having me.
That's a wrap on this episode. And as always, there's a lot to consider. But one thing is certain. As humans, we approach big topics from very different angles. This episode was brought to you by the Montana Governor's Office of Economic Development, the City of Bozeman, 10 Directions, Hatch, the Yellowstone Theological Institute, Montucky Cold Snacks, the Nova Cafe, Zocalo Coffee House, Whistle Pig Korean, Dean Zesty Booch, Bliss, the Sola Cafe and Market, Shank Construction, Ben Johnson Photography, Loken Productions, Superfluous Industries, and Blunderbuss.
A special thank you to Katie Kaminsky, Tia Goebel, and Connor Mulvaney.
A shout out to our editors and media team, Pat Loken, Joseph Sandoval, Allison Gregory, Shannon Hughes, Jessica Byerly, Jacob Desch, Nathaniel Johns, and Nicholas Hill. Thanks as always to Debbie Shank, Joe Fedora, Ethan Hoare, and Elliot Canfield. Do you have an issue that's riddled by gridlock in your community? We want to hear from you. Shoot me a message at tate@iminterchange.org. That's tate@iaminterchange.org. Until next time, share airtime and don't ruin dinner.